Hope you're doing well. Currently abroad, so hence the different background. Stay tuned for the vlog. I'm actually doing a terrible job at vlogging, but we'll see what comes out of it. But I wanted to continue the podcast regardless. So as usual, welcome back to Muni. Today we're going to talk about the intersection between media, isolation, and self-discovery. This video has been on my mind for a while, and I also have seen really good videos about this subject, which I will link down below for you all. But I think it's so interesting how much society and culture affect people's identity and personality. Again, this is like a very, very long subject, so let's get this party started. First of all, I think we need to lay down some foundations about this subject. First things first, we should discuss identity and society. I think the degree to which we are affected by society and social conditioning is often downplayed. Reality is, vast majority of us are extremely influenced by social conditioning. And in order to demonstrate that, I will actually use an experiment that I actually learned about in my gender and economic class, which is trying to explain to us how much we're affected by society. And I think this is like a really good experiment to shine light on the things I have been thinking about and the things that I want to speak about in this video. But basically, they conducted an experiment, and in the experiment they went to a class right before an exam, which they specifically prepared for, and in that class had Black and white students, and in there they kind of mentioned offhandedly that white people tend to do academically better than their Black counterparts. Now, this is a statement. Why that's the case is extremely has extreme economic and also sociopolitical means to explain why this happens, but we're not going to get into that. Now, later on, to the same class, they once again gave them an exam. It has the same level of difficulty as the first one, but they did not remind the Black students of the fact, right? And then they compared the results, and what they found is that when Black students were not told they do academically worse than their white counterparts, they actually performed better. So being reminded or told of that fact actually affected them unconsciously academically. They did the same experiment once again, but they did it with women in driving, and the same results happened. When they were told that they were bad drivers before an exam, they actually performed worse than they were not reminded of that fact, right? So what I'm trying to say is, and by telling you guys about this experiment, is that social conditioning can affect you and your action, and everything about you as a person, essentially. If you were told something, regardless of how untrue this is, it will ultimately affect you as a person. Now, at least to some degree, mind you, okay? Now, because of that, the issues pertaining to self-discovery starts to become a little bit blurry, okay? We are affected by everything we are fed, whether through content, culture, or everything around us. Everything around us pushes us in a specific way, and that path may not be the path that you want to follow, but instead we feel like we should follow, right? When the self becomes hard to define. How do you know that you like something because you actually like it, or whether you like it because you feel like you should like it? How do you know you want something because you want it, or you want something because you feel like you should want it? I don't know if you've seen this meme before, but I've seen it quite a bit and I relate to it, but I'll put it up here. Do you actually want it, or do you want other people to see that you have it? This is essentially like the whole thing that I think about quite a bit. It's like, why do I want to be perceived in that manner? Is it because I think people should want to perceive me in that manner? Our identity starts to feel almost elusive, especially when you begin to understand the depths to which we're affected by others. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing per se. Humans are social creatures, and we need people, and we also will always be affected by those around us. Not to mention, it is essentially in our genetic code, the need to conform, because otherwise we could not survive. If anyone does not fit the tribe, would be shunned and thus has less chances of survival. So it is literally innate within us to feel the need to fit the norm. But that essentially tends to take away parts of and aspects of us as people, because we feel the need to conform. Guys, this is like a very long subject and it can extend into many different branches. We can talk about it from an economic perspective, we can talk about it from a feminist perspective, but I will not go into depth about every single way it can be talked about. Instead, I think we should just talk about from a media perspective, especially how media can affect us as people and how we can instead use it as a means of self-discovery and regaining sort of autonomy in the media sphere. That's when isolation comes into play. Imagine this, okay? If you lived on an island far away from society and civilization, you have no internet connection, nothing but you and your thoughts. How would you act? What kind of books would you read? What type of music would you listen to? How would you dress? To me, this is like an extremely fascinating concept, and I actually obsess over this a lot. In fact, one of my biggest dreams, and this is like my retirement goals if I make enough money, is to like have my own private island so I can experience who I am as a person as far as away from society as possible. But it's so interesting to think about, like, who are you when you're not a product of algorithms and culture and other people's influence? Mind you, this isn't a new concept in any capacity. I think it's something that women are often fascinated with, especially. I think it's because as women, we feel the need to conform to a predefined set of characteristics of what a woman should be as a person. In fact, many books have been written about this, like I Have Never Known Men or The Wall by Marlene Hausfer. I think that's her last name, but I'm not quite sure, but I will put it up here for you guys. But isolation gives leeway for a person's identity, their likes and dislikes and thoughts to bloom independently of others. And that's when empowerment sort of comes into play. Isolation is a very important part of gaining a sense of self. If we didn't get pushed to like something, would we like it? By the way, just because you like something that's popular does not mean that's not a good thing, or you were pushed to like it. That's not what I'm talking about at all. But the question is whether or not would you like something if you were not pushed to like it by societal roles, right? Now, I'm not saying go and live on an island like my dream. I'm not telling you that, guys, that no. Or, sit at home without contacting other human beings and isolating yourself. No. What I'm talking about, rather, is gaining autonomy through isolation, which can help you discover yourself, right? That's what I really want to talk about. Many authors like Doris Lessing, for example, and James Baldwin have talked extensively about using media and isolation as ways to discover more about yourself as a person. Now, through shows, movies, books, articles, and using these medias and also isolating yourself from the preconceived notions of your likes and dislikes and algorithmic recommendation. So I will disclaim one more time, popular content is not in any way bad, okay? I'm a major fan of the manga One Piece, which is the biggest comic on planet Earth. It isn't about that at all. It's about discovering aspects of yourself that you would not have met if you had not pushed yourself outside of the norms of culture and also your preconceived notions of who you are as a person. The one thing I've done and I've experimented with and continue to do this year, which is experiment with book genres. I used to be so picky with the books I wanted to read. I used to read reviews and hyper focus on the negative ones. Or I would have like extremely high expectations and it completely ruined my reading experience. But then I just started like picking books. Like I would not look up reviews, I would not check the genre, I would not read like the little like back side of a book that says what this book is about. If I gravitated towards an author or a book, I would just pick it up randomly and just start reading it. And I've discovered so much about myself in the process. Like I discovered I like memoirs and I like classics, and apparently I'm a huge fan of nonfiction books, which I did not know. Like I used to refuse to read nonfiction, and I especially like to read about politics and economics and feminism. So I once even there was a time where I read a city planning book, and let me tell you what, I loved every fucking minute of it, okay? But I grew so much like as a person. I learned new things. I also experienced new things, all because I diversified my book selection process. Instead of reading what other people said I should read, I just read whatever my instincts told me to. I also stopped trying to consume content with the sole purpose of consuming it, though I do that sometimes for entertainment. For example, like I like Love is Blind, and there is no sustenance like from watching Love is Blind, but I watch it because it's fun, right? But I started consuming with the purpose of not just entertainment, but rather to experience. And I read everything till the end. Like, even if I didn't necessarily like it, my goal was to experience something new. And in the process, I always found things that I liked or learned something that I didn't know. And even when I read like something I absolutely hated, like for example, Soft Power by Joseph Nye Jr. Oh, I hated that book. I hated that book. But when I was reading it, I started to look into ways to critically dismantle his arguments, which was like really good practice for me in my brain. And I did that with literally everything. Like I did that with books, I did that with shows, with movies, and I would look for things that I would never click on. Like, have never seen an anime. Personally, I've been watching anime for a very long time, but like, let's say if you have never seen an anime, click on one. If you don't like horror movies, maybe you do, like, click on it, watch it, like, approach things with curiosity instead of trying to fulfill an urge. And if you hated it, that's cool, write it down. Why did you hate it? Why did it elicit such a strong reaction? Which kind of brings me on to my next point. In usage of isolation in media as isolation from algorithmic recommendations and also other people and media in order to discover more about yourself, I really found this that kind of helped quite a bit, which is taking notes. Okay, so I did this with a lot of the books I read, the shows I watched. Like, why did I like it? Like, why was it boring? Like, I would do that to everything. Just, I would get a journal and turn it into turned it into a commonplace book, and I just wrote down things I found interesting. A quote from someone said, write it down. And something resonated with you, write it down. Save it somewhere, even if it was from YouTube, if from Instagram, TikTok, even Pinterest as well. If I found something interesting, just wrote it down. And then you can look back at it and you'll find a pattern. You'll notice your train of thoughts. You may even realize that you believe in things that you never thought you actually believed in. And through writing those down, you can recognize what you actually believe in. And even through reading books, you can start seeing things from a different perspective in a different manner. And you may start understanding a point of view that you never understood before or even cared about understanding. I feel like the best way to discover more about yourself as a person in this kind of media landscape is to use it, right? This really cheap, widely available thing, right? And that we already are extremely consumed by. Use it in a healthier way to consume content rather than mindlessly scroll. Now, I do want to disclaim this. It will not help you if you have an addiction, which I have an addiction. This will not help you with your addiction. This will simply be a healthier way of consuming social media, and but it's not necessarily going to stop it or make it less intense, mind you. I'm just putting it out there. Now, influence is extremely powerful, but if you know yourself as a person, then it won't matter, right? Everything else will kind of follow suit. And you cannot blindly get there by following what other people do. You have to kind of make your way through it. And so that's when when kind of isolation comes into point, is that when you isolate yourself from what you think you like, what you think other people like, what you think you will like, and kind of the preconceived notions of what you should and should not like, or what even like preconceived notions that you've made up for yourself, not just society, like, because we make up preconceived notions about ourselves, and I've made many, and I've discovered many of them are wrong, right? Kind of taking that out and then just allowing yourself to exist inside of life and inside of media, outside of all of that, and allowing yourself to try new things and experimenting with yourself. Anyway, that is all from me today. This is such an extensive subject that can be discussed from many different perspectives, not just from a media landscape perspective. But if you guys are interested in these other ones, specifically with economics, I have a lot of things to say about it. But let me know if you actually are interested. Also, I want to ask you, like, what do you think is self-discovery, and what do you think is the best way to do self-discovery, and do you think self-discovery is even a real thing? Because sometimes I think about that and I'm like, yeah, I don't think it's a thing. Sometimes I don't know. Anyway, this is like philosophical as fuck, but yeah. Anyway, like and subscribe. This actually really helps the channel. And also, you know, like I said, if you want to make sure women make it in male dominated fields, podcasting, you should totally like and subscribe. Anyway, that is all for me today, and I'll see you all next week. Good day and bye. Bye guys.